In a quiet high school in Queens, New York, the corridors hummed with the usual energy of students rushing to class, teachers marking papers, and lives unfolding in ordinary ways. But behind the walls of Lincoln Heights High, one teacher carried a secret so devastating that when it surfaced, it left scars that would never heal. Anna Carter, a teacher admired for her poise, intelligence, and dedication, was trusted by students and parents alike. She wasn't just an educator, she was a role model, a guide, and, for many, a source of inspiration. But hidden beneath the facade of professionalism was a tangled web of decisions that would fracture everything she had built. It began subtly, a glance that lingered too long, an after-school meeting that stretched into the evening. From the outside, her life seemed structured, even enviable. But inside, she carried a growing void, one that she tried to fill with reckless choices. Her relationships with 4 of her students, young men she was meant to mentor and protect, would ignite a chain of events so explosive no one could emerge unscathed. The signs were there, faint at first: changed schedules, whispered conversations, questions left unanswered. The students were drawn to her in ways they didn't fully understand. She, in turn, saw in them pieces of what her life lacked: youth, excitement, and attention. Yet no one imagined how far things would go, nor how fragile trust could be when tested in such a way. What happens when trust is shattered and boundaries are crossed in ways that can never be repaired? When emotions boil over into chaos, when betrayal leads to confrontation, and when everything is laid bare for the world to see? This is a story of choices, each one heavier than the last, and their devastating consequences. It is a story that asks not just why it happened, but how it was allowed to happen at all. What would you do if someone you trusted, a teacher, a guide, was hiding secrets that could destroy lives? Let us know your thoughts in the comments as we uncover the truth about Anna Carter. Now, let's unravel the layers of this story and discover how the lives of Anna, her students, and an entire community were changed forever. Anna Carter was the kind of teacher every school dreams of. At 35 years old, she had spent over a decade building her reputation at Lincoln Heights High School in Queens, New York. Her students saw her as tough but fair, a woman who demanded the best and inspired respect. Her colleagues admired her sharp intellect, her no-nonsense approach, and her unwavering commitment to her craft. But the image she projected at school was only part of the story. At home, Anna's life was a far cry from the confidence she displayed in the classroom. She was married to David Carter, a traveling sales executive whose job often kept him away for weeks at a time. Their marriage, once filled with passion and connection, had become a partnership of convenience. The long nights alone, the lack of meaningful communication, the growing sense that something essential was missing, it all left her feeling hollow. She tried to ignore the emptiness, pouring herself into her work, but the cracks in her personal life began to show. Friends noticed her withdrawing, colleagues saw her growing more distracted, and even Anna herself couldn't deny the ache of loneliness that seemed to follow her everywhere. It was in this fragile state that she began to form connections she never should have entertained. Connections that offered her an escape from the isolation she faced at home. Connections that gave her a sense of purpose, of being seen, of feeling alive. But those connections would soon become chains, dragging her deeper into a world she could not control. Do you think Anna's personal struggles justified her actions? Or were they simply an excuse for choices she knew were wrong? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The lines between teacher and student are meant to be unbreakable. But in Anna Carter's world, those lines began to blur the moment Leo Johnson walked into her life. Leo was an 18-year-old senior, the kind of student others looked up to, captain of the basketball team, charismatic, and quick to flash a smile that could brighten any room. He was a natural leader. But beneath his confident exterior, he struggled to keep his grades up. Anna first noticed him during after-school tutoring sessions. What began as genuine concern for his future quickly shifted into something else. She admired his drive, his charm, the way he looked at her as though she were more than just a teacher. It started with long conversations after everyone else had left the building. Then came the lingering glances, the subtle touches, the shared secrets. Before long, their relationship crossed the line into forbidden territory, and what should have been a mentor-student bond became a secret they both swore to keep. Brandon was different from Leo. At 17, he was the school's star football player, brimming with confidence and energy. Unlike Leo, who fell into Anna's orbit gradually, Brandon pursued her with relentless determination. He would linger after class, inventing reasons to stay behind. At first, Anna dismissed his advances. But Brandon was persistent, his charm undeniable. Over time, their connection became reckless, fueled by impulsive decisions and stolen moments. Their meetings grew more dangerous, their relationship harder to hide. It wasn't about emotional connection for Brandon. It was about the thrill of winning Anna's attention. Ethan, at just 16, was the youngest of the four. He had a rebellious streak that set him apart, a risk-taker who thrived on breaking rules. Anna was drawn to his boldness, his unpredictability, his ability to make her feel alive in ways she hadn't in years. Their relationship wasn't built on subtlety. Ethan pushed boundaries without hesitation, meeting Anna in places they knew were dangerous. His actions were reckless, and her willingness to follow him into that world only deepened the danger they faced. Daniel, like Leo, was a senior, but that's where the similarities ended. At 18, he was thoughtful, introspective, and far more mature than his peers. He stayed behind after class to discuss literature and philosophy, drawing Anna into conversations that made her feel understood in a way she hadn't in years. Their connection was less physical and more emotional. He admired her intelligence, her passion for teaching, and the way she listened to him when no one else seemed to care. For Anna, Daniel represented something she had lost, a reminder of the person she used to be before her life became defined by loneliness and routine. But even this connection, as seemingly harmless as it appeared, crossed a line, and when the truth came out, Daniel's quiet admiration turned into heartbreak. 4 students, 4 relationships, 4 secrets, each one unique, each one dangerous. What drove Anna to risk everything? And how could these relationships remain hidden for so long? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below as we continue this story. For a time, Anna Carter thought she had everything under control. 4 students, each unaware of the others, each convinced they were special to her. She believed she could manage their emotions, their growing attachments, their relentless need for her attention. But secrets rarely stay hidden. The signs began to show, small, almost imperceptible at first. Leo noticed the way Anna's gaze seemed distant when they were together, as though her mind was elsewhere. Brandon grew frustrated with her excuses for canceled meetings, his confidence turning to suspicion. Ethan, ever the risk-taker, started to push for more of her time, demanding answers she couldn't give. And Daniel, the most observant of them all, began piecing together fragments of a truth he didn't want to believe. It was jealousy that lit the match, and once it started, there was no turning back. It happened on a cold Friday evening, just after the last bell had rung. The parking lot, usually quiet at that hour, became the stage for the collision of secrets and betrayal. Leo was the first to confront Anna. He waited by her car, his voice low but filled with hurt. "Who else is it, Anna?" he demanded. She tried to brush it off, to laugh and deflect, but he wasn't backing down. Before she could answer, Brandon appeared. His sharp tone cut through the tension as he approached. "What's going on here?" he asked, his eyes darting between Leo and Anna. He wasn't there by coincidence. He'd been watching, waiting for his chance to confront her. Then Ethan arrived, drawn by the escalating voices. He didn't ask questions. He simply joined the standoff, his presence alone adding fuel to the fire. And finally, Daniel, who had followed from a distance, stepped into the circle. He didn't say a word at first, his expression a mix of disbelief and pain. The four of them stood there, their emotions boiling over, their anger directed at each other as much as at Anna. Words turned into shouts, accusations flying like daggers. The fragile facade Anna had built shattered in an instant, leaving her exposed to the consequences of her actions. Then came the first shove. Brandon, always quick to act, pushed Leo back, his frustration exploding into violence. Leo retaliated, and within seconds, the parking lot turned into a battlefield. Ethan jumped in, siding with Brandon, his fists flying without hesitation. And Daniel, who had always avoided conflict, couldn't stay on the sidelines any longer. It was chaos. Fists collided, voices screamed, and Anna stood frozen, powerless to stop the storm she had created. Then someone grabbed a metal pipe. No one could say who started it, but it was Ethan who swung first. The blow landed hard, sending Leo crashing to the ground. Blood pooled beneath him as he gasped for air, his athletic frame crumpled by the force. Brandon lunged at Ethan, rage overtaking reason. Daniel, overwhelmed by the sight of the violence, grabbed the same pipe in a desperate attempt to end the fight. But his actions only escalated the chaos, his swings connecting with Brandon, then Ethan. By the time it was over, the parking lot was a scene of devastation. Leo lay unconscious. Brandon clutched his side in pain. Ethan's face was bruised and blooded, and Daniel's trembling hands still gripped the pipe. Sirens wailed in the distance, the sound cutting through the stillness like a knife. The truth was out. The secrets, the lies, the forbidden affairs, it all came crashing down that night. Anna Carter, the teacher who had once been a beacon of trust and respect, stood frozen as the lives of 4 young men unraveled before her eyes. The consequences of her actions were no longer something she could hide from. And for the students, the scars left by that night, both physical and emotional, would stay with them forever. What would you have done in Anna's place? Could this have been avoided, or was it always destined to end in tragedy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. When the police arrived at the Lincoln Heights High parking lot, the scene was nothing short of chaos. Blood stained the pavement, bodies lay broken and bruised, and Anna Carter stood motionless, her world collapsing around her. Leo Johnson was rushed to the hospital, his injuries critical. Brandon Miller and Ethan Ramirez were taken by ambulance, their wounds severe but not life-threatening. Daniel Harper, trembling and bloodied, was handcuffed on the spot. And Anna? She was questioned immediately, though the full weight of her actions would come to light in the days that followed. News of the scandal spread like wildfire. The once quiet school became the epicenter of a media frenzy, with reporters camping outside the gates, hungry for details of the teacher whose forbidden relationships had spiraled into violence. Headlines screamed of betrayal, of abuse of trust, of lives shattered by a secret no one had seen coming. For Anna, the reckoning had begun. Anna Carter was arrested within 24 hours. As the details of her relationships with the 4 students came to light, the charges piled up: child endangerment, statutory rape, and professional misconduct, among others. The courtroom became a stage for one of the most sensational trials the city had ever seen. Parents, teachers, and community members watched in disbelief as the evidence unfolded. Text messages, hidden meetings, and the testimonies of the students themselves. Each detail painted a damning picture of a teacher who had crossed every boundary imaginable. Anna sat in silence as the judge read her sentence: 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15. The weight of her choices now fully bore down on her. The teacher, who had once inspired so much admiration, was now a symbol of disgrace. For the students, the consequences were just as devastating. Leo Johnson, the charismatic basketball star, would never step onto the court again. His injuries ended any chance of an athletic scholarship, forcing him to rethink a future he had once believed was certain. The trauma of that night left him bitter and withdrawn, struggling to reconcile his role in the scandal. Brandon Miller, once brimming with confidence, found himself battling emotional scars that no amount of physical healing could erase. The shame of being part of the affair and the public judgment he faced left him angry and isolated. Ethan Ramirez, the youngest of the 4, was sent to juvenile detention. His rebellious nature, once a source of pride, became a burden as he faced the harsh reality of his actions. The experience changed him, forcing him to confront the consequences of his impulsivity. Daniel Harper, thoughtful and introspective, bore the heaviest emotional weight. His involvement in the fight and his role in escalating the violence led to a harsh sentence in juvenile detention. For Daniel, the scars weren't just physical, they were etched into his psyche, a constant reminder of the trust he had placed in someone who betrayed him. The Lincoln Heights community was left reeling. Parents questioned how a teacher's misconduct could go unnoticed for so long. The school's administration faced intense scrutiny, with demands for accountability and reforms to ensure student safety. What was once a respected institution became a symbol of failure, its reputation tarnished beyond repair. Efforts to rebuild trust began immediately, with new policies, stricter oversight, and counseling services for those affected. But the scars ran deep. For many, the name Anna Carter became synonymous with betrayal, a cautionary tale of what happens when those in power cross the lines they're meant to uphold. The fallout from that night would ripple through the lives of everyone involved for years to come. Trust had been broken, lives shattered, and a community forever changed. Do you believe the punishments fit the crimes? Could anything have been done to prevent this tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below as we continue uncovering the pieces of this devastating story. For Anna Carter, prison wasn't just a punishment. It was a stark reminder of everything she had lost. Once a respected teacher at the center of her community, she now found herself in a cold, gray cell, stripped of the authority and respect she had wielded so easily. Her days followed a monotonous routine: meals in the mess hall, long hours spent in silence, and fleeting moments of interaction with other inmates. But the isolation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She had betrayed her students, her profession, and her community, and the weight of that guilt pressed on her like a constant shadow. Her personal life had also unraveled completely. David, her husband, filed for divorce shortly after her sentencing. He left Queens, unable to reconcile the person he thought he knew with the woman whose choices had destroyed so many lives. Anna received no visitors, no letters, no connection to the world she had left behind. She was alone. In the early months of her sentence, Anna struggled to adapt. The reality of prison life was harsh, and the whispers of her infamous case followed her everywhere she went. Other inmates, many of whom had faced their own battles with abuse or betrayal, made their disdain for her clear. Anna rarely spoke, keeping her head down and avoiding conflict. But the silence gave her time to think. Too much time. Every decision she had made, every line she had crossed, replayed in her mind like a film she couldn't turn off. The regret was crushing. Eventually, she sought solace in routine. She took on tasks in the prison library, finding a small sense of purpose in organizing books and helping other inmates learn to read. It wasn't much, but it was something, a tiny step toward atonement in a life now defined by loss. Despite her efforts to find meaning, Anna couldn't escape the overwhelming guilt. The faces of the 4 students haunted her, each one a reminder of what she had taken from them. Leo's future as an athlete, Brandon's confidence, Ethan's reckless innocence, and Daniel's quiet hope. She had been entrusted with their potential, their vulnerabilities, and their dreams. And instead of guiding them, she had led them into a nightmare. But for all her regret, Anna knew that some things could never be undone. The damage was permanent, and forgiveness, if it ever came, would be a distant hope. She wrote letters to each of the students, though they were never sent. In them, she poured out apologies, explanations, and a desperate plea for them to rebuild their lives despite what she had done. The letters stayed locked away in a box under her bunk, unread and unanswered, but writing them became her way of processing the enormity of her actions. Anna Carter's life in prison is a story of regret, reflection, and the search for redemption. But whether redemption is possible remains uncertain. Do you believe someone like Anna can ever truly be forgiven? Or are some actions too destructive to overcome? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The story of Anna Carter is more than a tale of betrayal and tragedy. It's a sobering reminder of the far-reaching consequences of unethical decisions. Her actions didn't just destroy her life. They left scars on her students, her school, and her community that may never fully heal. One of the clearest lessons is the importance of boundaries. As a teacher, Anna held a position of trust and authority. Her role was to guide, protect, and inspire. Yet she crossed the lines that were meant to safeguard her students. This story shows just how fragile trust can be, and how quickly it can be shattered when someone abuses their power. At its core, Anna's story is also about the dangers of acting out of desperation. Her loneliness and dissatisfaction became the fuel for decisions that unraveled not only her life, but the lives of those she was meant to help. It's a stark reminder that seeking validation or comfort at the expense of others often leads to destruction. Anna wasn't the only one to suffer. Her students paid a steep price for her choices, and their futures were forever altered by her actions. Perhaps the most devastating part of this story is how easily trust can be broken. Anna's students trusted her as their mentor, their guide, and their protector. Their parents trusted her with the well-being of their children, and her community trusted her to uphold the values of her profession. Once that trust was violated, the ripple effects were immense. Relationships were fractured, reputations were destroyed, and the sense of safety and respect that once defined Lincoln Heights High was lost. Trust, as this story shows, is not easily repaired once it's broken. Anna Carter's downfall serves as a stark warning. Power is a privilege, not a weapon, and the choices we make, no matter how small or personal they seem, can ripple outward, affecting lives in ways we can't imagine. What lessons do you take away from this story? How do we rebuild trust when it's been broken so deeply? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The story of Anna Carter is one that leaves us with more questions than answers. It is a story of choices, choices made in moments of weakness, choices that violated trust, and choices that left lives irreparably changed. 4 students, each with their own dreams and vulnerabilities, fell victim to her betrayal. A community was left shaken, a school tarnished, and Anna herself stripped of the respect and position she once held. This story reminds us of the weight of responsibility, the fragility of trust, and the consequences of crossing lines that should never be crossed. As we close this story, we invite you to reflect on the many layers of this tragedy. Do you think Anna's actions were a result of her personal struggles, or were they deliberate choices driven by selfishness? Could her students have been protected if the warning signs had been addressed earlier? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What lessons do you believe can be learned from this story? And how can schools, communities, and families work together to prevent something like this from ever happening again? If you found this story thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of real-life stories that leave lasting impressions. Thank you for watching, and be sure to join us for our next video, where we'll uncover another shocking story that challenges our perceptions of trust and responsibility. Until then, stay safe, stay thoughtful, and remember, the choices we make today will shape the lives of those around us tomorrow.